I'm here with Rupert from Rupert's Reptiles on Instagram. Out here in Southeast Asia trying to find every kind of snake there is.
And that was when the most deafening, like trumpeting screech just comes out of the jungle, and I realize I'm like just a few meters away from an elephant. And I shine my light in and I can see its eye. So I run and I start climbing this bank on the left, and I go about maybe 4 meters up, turn the light on, shone in, and then all of a sudden it just comes like out from the vegetation towards me. And I was like, you understand that there are real material things in the jungle which can get you, and they'll just squash you like a rat. And the pain can be extremely bad. But it was definitely, I think, the worst pain I'd ever experienced in my life. What we're looking for is usually either rare stuff or stuff which is impressive.
Curiosity is the key to the imagination.
My girlfriend podcast, let's do this.
Dream the impossible dream. Welcome to Mike Helfman's Curiosity Podcast.
I'm here with Rupert from Rupert's Reptiles on Instagram. Super nice to meet you, man. It really is. You know, we've been talking for like the last 15 minutes. It wasn't on camera, but I just reached out to you on Instagram, and he got back to me. I thought he looked like a really interesting guy. He's out here in Southeast Asia trying to find every kind of snake there is. What is it? Where does a guy like you come from? How did Rupert start? Like, give me the background, man. Why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
I think I've always been this way, like literally always. As young as I was a tiny kid, I was trying to find frogs in the garden, try and find insects in the garden. I was trying to find as many species as possible. The second I got my hand on a field guide for like British invertebrates, I was just like, I need to tick all of these off. I need to find these. And that evolved over time. And one day, traveled outside of Europe, went to South Africa actually, and I saw my first like real close encounter with a wild snake. And I was like, that is it right there. That's the best thing I've ever seen. And for pretty much from that moment onwards, was just absolutely captivated by reptiles.
How old were you at that time?
13.
13, and then you came to Southeast Asia shortly after that?
Shortly after, same year. Same year I came to Southeast Asia after, and by that point, I wasn't just looking for like general wildlife. I was like, I want to find snakes first and foremost, travel in Thailand, Malaysia, and in those places, these regions in particular, I think I was more captivated than any other place I went to. In that year, we went to all kinds of places, New Zealand, Australia, United States, Africa, Sri Lanka. And I think Southeast Asia is something to do with the culture here, the rainforest and the species present, all combined to make me feel like incredibly comfortable and inspired. And after I came back from that trip, all I did was like research snakes of Southeast Asia, reptiles of Southeast Asia. And at that point, I was like, I need to come back and I need to find as many of these as possible. It hasn't really stopped since then.
So did you go on to study that at school? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I did a degree in wildlife biology.
Where'd you go? Where'd you do?
University of Kent.
Okay.
So
wildlife biology. So that kind of encapsulates all of wildlife, or tell me a little bit about that.
Just
and how
everything.
That works.
You know what? I didn't even want to go to university.
Okay.
It was kind of more of a bigger deal for my parents, I think, than it was for me. Mm-hmm. Like I wasn't too keen on going back to school. I definitely would have preferred, but I didn't have much to do, and I got accepted into the course, and I was like, hey, this looks kind of fun, let's do it. In hindsight, I think I would have been 10 times better off study-wise if I did something like English literature or history, something that I'm naturally talented at, but I grinded my way through like doing biology crap for like years, and I think it was, you know, somewhat useful in the end, some capacity.
But ultimately, it seems to me like your passion is straight up just going out in the field, finding stuff, checking off. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, around that time, I wanted to be a herpetologist. That's what I thought was the only career in being interested in reptiles and amphibians, right? Yeah. By the time I finished my degree, I was like, I do not want to be a herpetologist, man. I'm not super fond of this field. I had like an insight into it. I kind of dipped out of it for a while, worked in the UK for a few years, still kept this interest on the side, more as a hobby. Then COVID hit, and I had a couple years just to kind of sit around and plot. And I was like, man, there's got to be a way to do something cool with reptiles and amphibians. And that's when we plotted to come out here to Southeast Asia and basically start doing this full time. And the second the restrictions were lifted, flew out to Thailand. I've been here since.
Nice. So one of the things I saw on your Instagram that kind of captivated me, I'm like, this guy has got to be an interesting guy, right? Is that you want to document every reptile or every snake at least in Southeast Asia? Is that the goal?
Nah, not really. I kind of just say that as a gimmick. There's a lot of snakes I don't care about. I more care about like going out and finding the most significant, the most interesting, or ones which aren't known at all.
Okay, well, how far have you gotten so far?
Pretty far, actually, with certain regions. Like I've seen more of Thailand's snake species than any other person, let's say, ever. There's not an official ranking list, but amongst the circles that we like operate in and people who are in this, it's kind of well known. Malaysia probably on a similar level in terms of Malaysia and Borneo. But of course, there's many countries in Southeast Asia. And at this point, I've been to most of them and I've searched for or found a lot of my biggest targets. But there's still like an unlimited catalog of ridiculous, like, you know, unicorn, white whale species that I want to look for in the future.
So how many of them, how many in Thailand? How many in
It's like
Malaysia?
240 in Thailand. I've seen almost 200.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those last 40, a lot of them are made up of sea snakes, which are I haven't even tried yet. And the last like 30 or whatever, which I haven't like seen, which are land snakes. So a lot of those haven't been seen since they were first found.
Wow.
You know, so it's like, or it's just places I haven't had the chance to go to yet.
Okay, and in Malaysia, is it similar,
Yeah.
or how many are there in Malaysia?
I don't have an official count for how many there are. I think it's a similar number, like 200 and something snakes in Malaysia, in the low 200s.
Uh-huh.
And I think I've seen, again, almost 190, something
Wow.
like that. Yeah.
Wow. So what are the white whales? What are the unicorns? What are you really looking for?
Well, there's one snake in Thailand. It's called the Onkoi lancehead, Onkoi lance-headed pit viper. I've been to look for that one 5 times, right? And that's in the most remote part of Thailand, the most isolated remote part. Been up there many times. We're still looking for that.
Where is it, in the north?
Northwest, yeah. So Onkoi district in Chiang Mai, North Tak, and southeastern Mae Hong Son.
Okay.
And there's a couple in Malaysia that are just like absolute holy grails for anybody involved in this field. There's one called the royal tree snake. It's like this ridiculous snake that goes to like 2.5 meters long, and it's yellow and blue banded with like green and golden spots all over the body. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
It's a beautiful snake.
And not many people have ever seen that in the wild, especially not people who are like interested in finding snakes specifically. It's one of those ones that just, it lives in Borneo, it lives in Peninsular Malaysia and Taman Negara as well, but the sightings are like so few and far between, which is hard to believe for a snake that gets to almost 3 meters.
Wow. Is it because it's high up in the canopy?
Yeah, you got it, first time. Yeah, eats birds super high up in the canopy, and it only lives in primary rainforest, and there's very limited primary rainforest remaining in Malaysia in particular.
Yeah.
So it is, you know, getting to the places where it lives. Actually, I can't speak too much on that. We don't know too much about it. The one that was held in captivity only ate fish. And one of the only ones that was ever found by herpetologists, which dropped into a river in front of their boat in Borneo. So maybe there's some kind of correlation between it and predating fish, but
Right.
it's, you know, when a snake has been seen hardly many times at all, we're never too sure about how it lives.
That's fascinating. Could it have been hunting when it fell out of the tree
Yeah.
to try and get a fish?
Yeah, some people speculate that, yeah.
I mean, that's what
Could
I'd
have been trying to
imagine.
get it, yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen other animals do something like that. I can't. Is it lizards or snakes that they kind of hang on the branches and then they
Yeah,
try?
all
And,
kinds of animals do that.
okay.
There's many snakes that sit on branches close to water and ambush fish, like that.
that's so cool.
Yeah. That's just one of many. There's one in China, the Mangshan pit viper. That's like one of my all-time gold snakes to find. More people have been seeing it in recent years since the like social media has become popular and more Chinese people have got into like looking for snakes. But for a foreigner to see it, there's still nobody. You know, still no foreigner has ever seen it in the wild.
What part of China is that in?
So Mangshan National Park is northern Guangzhou.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So all right.
Guangdong is the province. Guangdong, northwestern Guangdong. Yeah.
All right, so
Yunnan.
I've gone hiking, you know, we were talking earlier, I've told you I've gone hiking a bunch of times in Malaysia. I've seen like 2 snakes, right? And you're out here.
very normal.
You're out here finding 5 snakes a night. What's the trick, man? What's the secret?
I don't know, going out at night, I think, is a really important thing. You were probably walking around the daytime.
That's
most
right.
of the time.
Yeah.
Snakes are hard to find in the daytime. Mostly it revolves around like just chance encounters in front of the path. If you're looking for them in the daytime, we can definitely find them more consistently, but it takes a lot of effort. At night, there's more active. A lot of snakes are sleeping in places where they're easy to see. You get the super expensive bright headlight on, start shining around. They just light up in the forest.
Okay.
There's certain habitats you can look for. Is the trail near a stream? If it's near a stream, there's more likely to be more reptiles around that area. You walk that stream, just cover enough ground, scan the right type of vegetation, the right type of ponds. It's very, very consistent to find them.
Now, the snakes that are in Southeast Asia, like, what's the percentage, what's the ratio to poisonous versus non-poisonous? Is there a big
question
difference?
to answer, because a lot of snakes are technically poisonous or venomous, as we call it.
Yeah, venomous.
When they have like rear fangs, right? A lot of colubrid snakes have rear fangs, and to us and many people, they're considered harmless because to have any effect, they need to chew on you for like 30 seconds to 2 minutes to even massage any venom in. And even if they do, a lot of their venoms won't have any effect on a human. It's like specialized towards lizards, frogs, whatever. In terms of front fang venomous snakes, vipers, cobras, kraits, coral snakes, maybe like 6 to 7, 8% of all snakes.
Okay, in Southeast Asia or period?
Southeast Asia, period, either.
Okay,
Some
so
regions of the world have no venomous snakes. Madagascar has 60 to 80 species of snake, no venomous species, so obviously that can
Right.
impact it. But in most of the tropical and temperate regions of the world, it's a smaller percentage.
Okay, so here we've got the big ones though, right? We've got king cobra.
Yeah.
What? Help
I
me.
would still say that in terms of venomous snakes, Southeast Asia has actually quite benign. Places like Africa, the venomous snakes that occur there are like a lot harder to handle and a lot more like, let's say, confrontational. You know, Africa has spitting cobras that will shoot venom 3 meters directly into your eye. We have spitting cobras here in KL, Malaysia, but they wouldn't be able to spit in my eye if I was standing up at my like full height of 186 cm. Yeah. So they're a little bit less evolved. King cobra, incredibly dangerous, one of the most dangerous snakes in the world to be bitten by, but also incredibly shy.
Okay.
So shy, so nervous of humans, and you know, bites are rare. So
Good to know.
yeah.
I actually had a run-in with a spitting cobra, apparently, during Chinese New Year this year, the year of the snake. We were driving to a friend's house in Penang, and in the middle of the road, there's a snake. So I'm driving, we stop, we slow down, we pull up next to it, and it's this black cobra with a gold diamond on the back of its hood. You know, and it just went off. And
Monocle cobra.
so it's not, is that a spitting cobra or no?
It can spit venom, but it's not a spitting cobra. It's a rare thing for that to happen. You know, here around KL, we have the native Sumatran spitting cobra, which is jet glossy black, really, really deep glossy black. And recently, the monocle cobra, we believe, has been introduced to KL. And that's the one which, when its neck is closed, it has the diamond on the back. And it's more of like a dark brown coloration rather than the deep, deep glossy black. Although depending on its size, it can be more black. But if it's got that marking on the back of the neck, it's a monocle cobra.
Yeah, it clearly had like a goldish marking on the back of the neck, you know, light brown, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
But hey, man, it's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, I hope so. That was the year of the snake. It brought in the year of the snake. Pretty cool. So I'm sure you've been on some pretty crazy, epic adventures in these, with your expeditions that you go on. Because how many expeditions are you going on a year?
A lot, at least one per month.
Okay.
Probably some months of the year, maybe 2 or 3. I'd say like maybe 15, 16.
And where are you going? You're going everywhere.
Everywhere in Southeast Asia. I do Southeast Asia.
What to you is the most native, not most native, but I would say the most frontier area that you've explored?
I think it's got to be the Sulu Archipelago in the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
If you're familiar, that's southwest Mindanao. It's this island chain between the Philippines and Borneo. And it's a majority Muslim area, which was traditionally part of the Sultanate of Sulu, which included Sabah and places like that, and was annexed by the Philippines at some point in the past after the British Empire fell. And this area has been troubled, to say the least. Some people who are watching may have heard of Abu Sayyaf. It's one of the most famous terrorist groups in Southeast Asia, famous in Europe and America as well, because of the fact that ISIS claimed them, or they claimed to be part of ISIS. So having ISIS in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, became a pretty big news story. And of course, there was some ridiculous, very, very terrible things that happened. They executed some Canadian millionaires, all kinds of kidnappings, high-profile bombings and things like that, and basically made the region unvisitable for so many years. And to this day, there's still many Moro separatist groups that operate in the area, but fortunately, Abu Sayyaf is declared essentially defunct. And once that was declared, we were like, we have to go here. Because we'd seen in a Facebook identification group pictures of a pit viper in the temple viper group from this island, which looked totally different to anything we had ever seen before, right? And we were like, this is ridiculous. We have to find this. And it just so happened that another snake I really wanted to see occurred in Zamboanga. Zamboanga is the only way to fly to this island. And we were like, let's combine this. Let's do a trip there. And we went there and we found the viper. If you want to hear more about that story, I'm happy to.
Yeah,
share.
go into it, man.
So it was, firstly, everybody told us not to go. One of my best friends lives in the Philippines, married to a Filipino woman.
Yeah.
My friend Keith, his family, his Filipino side of the family, they were straight up warring over this trip. They were like, you cannot go here. You know, it's irresponsible for you as a future father, as a husband. It was like a very big deal. My girlfriend has pretty much just accepted her fate at this point. Like, I wanted to go to Afghanistan that year and do herping there. This was like a downgrade in her eyes in terms of danger. So we were really, she didn't mind too much. Either way, I had a rule. I was not going to read anything about the kidnappings or various things that happened beforehand, because I didn't even want that playing on my mind. I just wanted to be locked in. And we made a local contact there, a guy called Shamsuddin. We just found him on Facebook. Originally, he wouldn't just reply to our messages, so Keith just started spam calling his phone, right? Until eventually he picked up and he told us basically, sorry guys, the signal's really bad on this island. I don't have internet most of the time. But this started a conversation. He was basically, yeah, you guys are welcome. Come to the island. We show up on the island. He says, we'll meet you at your hotel. We're waiting for him. We do not know who is coming at this point. Everyone looks at you in this island crazy because it's like foreigners there are just basically unheard of, and everybody asks you, are you US Army? Because other than like us and maybe like 2 vloggers ever, it's just like US military personnel who go there. So we're waiting there, and all of a sudden these guys pull up in an ambulance, right? Like it's a Toyota Hilux that's being repurposed as an ambulance, right? And they're like, get in, guys, we're going. So we look at each other, we're like, screw it. We jump in the back of this ambulance, closes all the like windows and doors. It's scorching. Philippines in the middle of a heat wave. It's like 40 degrees at this point, right? And even though there's air conditioning, this little piddly, meager air conditioning unit is not doing enough. And first they're like, oh lads, we need to like, we're going to stop by at the mosque beforehand before we go. And we're like, yeah, sure. So we observe their prayer and we're looking, this is a central Tawi Tawi mosque. It's pretty impressive. And they bring us out for like an hour. And we're just sitting in the back of this, let's just call it Toyota Hilux, being brought for an hour. And about like 10 minutes into our drive, signal's gone on all our phones.
I'm sure the infrastructure's not very good there either.
No, it's not. There's no signal. Not for us, not for anyone on the inland of Tawi Tawi. And we're driving for an hour. And eventually they're just like, let's go guys. He's like, we were originally supposed to go to his farm, but he was like, the workers at this place say they see the snake a lot. We're going to start here first. We jump out. These guys have got like guns on their waist, and Keith's like pointing. It's like, they got guns. And one of the other guys was like, you know, you think we should do this? Like, you know, once we get out of this van, this Hilux, we're completely under their control. Like, we could be kidnapped for all we know. And I thought about it for a bit, and I looked around, and I was like, nah, I think these guys are trustworthy, actually. They seem like good guys. And we were like, let's go then. So we jump out of the ambulance. All these guys and machetes just start pulling up out of nowhere. They're just there to join the search effort. We go into this scorching hot. It's something like out of Far Cry. You know, there's all these palm trees everywhere. It's blazing hot sunshine. We're out here in the daytime. Finding snakes in the day is difficult as it is. And I'm just like running through all these scenarios in my head. It's like, what if they try and kidnap us? What do we do? But I'm just like, put those to the side, focus on finding the snake. Not even 20 minutes in, I look into the bushes and there it is, just sitting there. This huge pit viper about this long, black all along the top, bright yellow all along the side. And that was it. We all celebrated, got together. We got legendary photos of like everybody in the group, including the guys with their guns, like together. Spent 20 minutes, because one of the most beautiful things about the Philippines is that everyone speaks English there. Yeah. Even out in somewhere this remote, there's still multiple guys there that speak English. And we just spent like an hour just talking to these guys about the snake. And this guy Shams, he's such a legend, man. He's just done so much to like raise the profile of snakes of that island. He loves them. And we just chatted to these guys for ages, wrapped up, did our photography, did all the stuff we needed to do with that snake to like document it for the first time, and then went back to the city.
Awesome. Shout out to Zam.
Shams.
Shout out to Sham.
Shout out to Shams, yeah, it's a real one.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So when a pit viper is obviously poisonous, right?
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with these snakes, do you ever handle them?
Yeah,
Or-
of course. I've been working with snakes for 12 years. I'm very comfortable handling them. Most snakes are very easy to handle. But I have been bitten a couple times.
By a venomous snake?
Yeah.
And how did that work out for you?
You know, I feel like both times I was quite fortunate. The first time I was bitten by a white-lipped pit viper. It's a green viper in Thailand, probably the snake responsible for, I think, the most bites in Thailand, or second most bites. And some of them can be really bad. Like you can require anti-venom, you can be in hospital for a few days. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun at all. My left hand was out of action for weeks, like completely swollen, like a blackened mark there. Fortunately, it only got me with one fang instead of two. So I think because the yield was quite low, my effects weren't too bad. I didn't have any negative blood work, and I didn't need any anti-venom, which is good. Because anti-venom is not good, by the way. If you need anti-venom, that's a problem. Anti-venom can sometimes be more harmful than the venom itself. So
Really?
you want to avoid that at all costs.
Wow, I didn't know that. So what were the effects of this? Where did it get you?
It's hard to remember now. I think it's still like a bit, like this index finger here. You can see that like scar tissue is built up on this side. It's still like really hard and weird on like that side of the finger. It just got me when I was tired and careless.
And what
I wasn't
happened?
even handling the snake.
So what happened? What were the symptoms exactly?
Just immediately I felt like, maybe like 30 seconds later I could feel pain in the area. And that's when I knew it wasn't a dry bite, it did inject venom. And we're like, here we go, let's go to the hospital. So on the way over, it just gradually begins to swell up and the pain begins to spread. And it generally just spreads more and more and more throughout your arm, and you'll start feeling pain in your lymph nodes. And the pain can be extremely bad. I think I have a very, very high pain tolerance, actually. And it was never that bad for me. But it was definitely, I think, the worst pain I'd ever experienced in my life. So that's probably
So you were feeling it in your lymph nodes under your chin, that area?
everywhere,
Or
but especially along the left side of my body. Like I spent, 2 nights in hospital for like the first day, like the whole day when I was there. Like I couldn't move this side of my body. Like the second I moved, just pain throughout the lymph nodes everywhere. And of course, like the hand is just, write that off. You can't use that hand for a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Immovable. And
Just too painful. Anything touches your hand, you move it at all.
was your hand all swollen up?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah,
okay.
it was. Yeah, for like maybe a week afterwards.
So what did they give you for that?
Nothing.
Nothing. So you're just in
Nothing.
the hospital under observation.
Yeah, and I'm so weird. I refused painkillers as well. I refused morphine. I just had some kind of perverse interest to see how bad the pain would get.
I get it.
Because so many people have talked about how painful it is to be bitten by venomous snakes. And I know like one of my friends was bitten by one. He was like, man, the morphine wasn't, he was like, it wasn't doing anything, the morphine. And I was like, let's see how bad this was. And I was just like, and after it got to its worst point and started decreasing, then I took a couple like painkiller pills because I was just, I'm done with this shit now. I prefer to just be a bit more comfortable.
You had the experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they just took my blood every like 4 hours or so because it's hemotoxic venom, which means it affects the blood and it can give you kind of internal problems if you receive a bad bite, like bleeding issues, internal hemorrhaging, etc. So they just check your blood. After like the 4th time of doing that, 5th time, there'd still be nothing. I was like, guys, let's stop this now.
Because, okay, so from my research, which is limited, there's several different types of venom,
Yep.
right? So what type of venom was this?
This was hemotoxic venom.
Hemotoxic.
Yeah,
So that means it
hemotoxic.
circulates throughout the body, right?
Yeah.
And then the other type that is kind of like decays the skin in the area of where the bite is.
Cytotoxic, yeah.
Cytotoxic.
Hemotoxic does that as well. Like
Okay.
hemotoxic. Bear in mind, I'm not a toxicologist. This is all just information I've absorbed by being like peripheral to reptiles and snakes.
Right.
But yeah, cytotoxins tend to be a lot more damaging to the tissue, although hemotoxic venom can do that as well.
Right.
And the neurotoxic venom primarily affects the nerves and the internal organs.
Okay. Okay. And then you said you were bitten a second time?
Yeah, that time by a neurotoxic snake, a blue coral snake. It's quite a famous snake, famous here in Malaysia. A lot of people would have heard of it. And if you go online and search about it, it'll say, oh, this snake is deadly. Snake has killed people. It's not really true. Snake is actually really weak venom, especially for an elapid. And numerous people I know have been bitten by it, and even more people who we don't know, like amateurs who accidentally picked one up or whatever. That snake always just it creates pain and swelling. The pain can be really bad, but it will go away in a couple of days' time. So that was just my experience, and it was okay.
So what's the difference though between the neurotoxic and the
Hemotoxic?
The hemotoxic, yeah. Like in terms of pain that you felt.
The pain wasn't any different, actually.
Okay, so the pain was the same.
I'd say the only real difference I felt was that the blue coral's pain, I felt it immediately. Like the second the venom, the fangs pierced my skin, it was like, felt like a wasp sting on the side.
That was the viper, right?
No, that was with the blue coral snake, which is neurotoxic.
It got you in the same
viper,
place? Okay.
I only felt a tingling to start at first, and it slowly developed into pain over the course of like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. But other than that, the pain was concentrated the same areas. The blue coral snake also affected the lymph nodes. It also caused swelling, although with the viper it swelled all the way up my arm.
Okay.
With the blue coral, it only swelled up to like my wrist here, and this part of my hand never even swelled. It was only a small one, like maybe 50 centimeters or something like that.
Okay.
My friend got bitten by one that was like 150 centimeters, and he said it was really bad. Like the pain just wouldn't go away despite morphine for days. So that's why I say I've always been quite lucky. A couple low quantity venom yield bites from smaller snakes.
Okay, so you just said that antivenom can be more dangerous sometimes than actual venom itself. That's interesting. Have you seen recently, there's this guy who's been getting some press who apparently has been feeding himself venom in minute doses over the course of his life to try to become immune from snake venom? What's your thoughts on this?
Self-immunization.
Yes.
I don't think that's a very good thing to do.
Okay.
I think that's really harmful to your body. And it's some kind of strange, you know how certain people have an attitude towards like tattoos and piercings, is that they kind of enjoy the pain that comes with it and those kind of statements they make upon their body. I've always found it to be similar to that. People who just want to take things to a new level and experience a certain pain with like a goal in mind, whether the goal is to have artwork on your body to look a certain way or to make it so your pet snake can bite you and not get any effects, which I guess that can be useful. Most people are never bitten by their pet snake anyway, so.
Do most people have hold on.
Bless you.
Oh, thank you. I feel like most people don't have venomous snakes as their pet either.
There's
right?
a lot of people that do. Like a lot of people keep venomous snakes. The legislation makes it very difficult, but in countries like Thailand, definitely Malaysia as well, it's a lot more common, especially in Thailand. So yeah, people obviously, probably the most common cause of venomous snake bites in a lot of places is from people keeping them in captivity.
All right, well, talking about people and snakes, what's the biggest snake in Southeast Asia?
Reticulated python.
Okay, and they've been known to eat people, right? I've seen a couple of articles.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you know, when I was a kid, I remember reading about snakes, and people would always make these comments about like, oh, you can't keep a pet snake, it'll eat you. Oh, this python will eat you, an anaconda will eat you. And at that time, there was no tangible literature that proved that these big snakes had ever eaten people, right? So we used to always tell people, it's a myth, snakes don't eat people. Well, over the last like 10 or so years, now we know for a fact that snakes do eat people, because in Sulawesi, I know it's happened in other places, but Sulawesi in particular, there's been multiple like proven documented cases of reticulated pythons eating people.
And Sulawesi is Indonesia. It's an island in Indonesia. And the people on Sulawesi are actually quite smaller in stature, right?
Yes, very famously so. So a combination of the world's largest snake for some of the world's smallest people seems to not be a particularly good combination. Not to mention that the country is like covered something ridiculous, like 70% or more in forest. Like forest cover is everywhere, lots of mountain, like tribes people and stuff like that. So they are obviously more vulnerable when they're living amongst snakes that have a big prey base.
And how big are these snakes? How big do they get?
Well, I've seen a reticulated python. I've seen 2 pythons that were over 6 meters long.
Okay.
Right,
It's
and
like
I think the
20
ones that
feet for anybody asking.
So the ones that are eating people, I can't remember exactly, but I'd estimate them to be somewhere around like 7 meters long.
Okay.
Yeah. They can grow to 10. The largest recorded one is apparently 10 meters long. And I can believe it because I've seen with my own eyes. And I haven't seen that many pythons like in my life, you know, maybe only like 60, 70, something like that. I've seen one that's like 7 meters long, like in the wild. And when I was younger, and I remember I wanted to get close to it. And the guy I was with, this guy Vern in Thailand, who was an expat there who kind of showed me a little bit around herping when I was first getting into it. He was like, "We are not going near that thing," and I was like, "I understand."
Have you ever like caught any of these things? Have you ever like interacted, wrestled any of them? You know, anything like that?
We caught a 6-meter python on one of our expeditions in 2023, and you know the thing is, a lot of 6-meter pythons exist in captivity, and the ones in captivity are fed or potentially even overfed, so they get really, really thick. The ones in the wild are not as impressive looking. They have a limited prey base. Food in the wild isn't as consistent as it is in captivity, so they tend to be a bit skinnier. But don't let that like make you think it's not strong. Like these snakes are incredibly strong, but they tire out easily. And with just 3 of us, we managed to handle it, like someone on the head, 2 people on the body, to keep it from like wrapping around any person. We managed to tire it out in like 10 to 15 minutes. And after that, it's incredibly heavy, but very easy to maneuver. And we're able to like take pictures with it.
Did you guys take measurements and stuff like that?
Yeah.
So you can know how, okay.
Yeah, we did.
And what do you typically, when you're in the field and you're on research, what are you guys exactly measuring? Okay, yeah, so let's build on this a little bit, because earlier when we were talking, you were talking about doing surveying areas. Can you walk me through what the process of surveying an area is like and how it gets done?
I think that my team and me in particular have revolutionized the herpetological survey method over the last few years, especially in terms of turning up extremely high numbers of snakes in a short period of time. So generally what we do is we find an area which is of particular interest to us. We go there with a group of, maybe if it's like a more research-based trip, maybe 3 to 5 people, 3 to 6 people maybe, and then we'll split up into different groups. And the smaller groups, or certain times just one individual, will attack particular areas which we identify as having high potential for species. And we'll spend many hours hiking in the field. A lot of the time, if there's not trails and roads which are accessible, it just means finding streams in the jungle, finding shallow streams and following them up as far as you can go, going along the sides of the streams, finding mammal trails, and we'll just comb that area. And each day as it progresses, we'll become more familiar with the area, identify places which are worth returning to, places that aren't, and we'll maybe combine our efforts into more people searching one area and more people searching together. But there's never any need to have too many people in one place at once, because when you're very experienced, you can cover an area well by yourself. And just generally pool finds together. That's how you turn over a very high quantity of things. And what we're looking for is usually either rare stuff or stuff which is impressive. Because like not everything we do is just based around discovering new species. A lot of it is just, this snake is amazing and rare and has never been photographed properly before, not for a long time. We want to find that. And that's the general aim of what we're going to do. And if we encounter something that's new or special along the way, then we can approach that with a unique lens.
Okay, well, speaking about these rare and new species, checking your Instagram, saw that you actually discovered a new species last year.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through that from beginning to end in every detail of how you can remember it went down?
Yeah. Well, I've discovered a few species over my time in the field. Actually, I've discovered a lot of species, but in terms of ones which actually went on to be published and described, and we had the holotypes and paratypes for, I've described 3 different reptiles: a worm lizard from Peninsula Malaysia, a kukri snake from southern Thailand, and most recently the lance-headed pit viper from Laos, which is by far and above the most significant of all of them. You know, a few years ago, or even 1 year ago, before October, if you asked people if there was a new species of Protobothrops, which is the genus of lance-headed pit viper, occurring in Southeast Asia, a lot of people would have told you probably not. Or at least not one which is tangibly different the second you lay eyes on it, right? So the fact that we saw a picture posted online by some random caver who went to Laos, who was like, oh, I found a 3-horn scale pit viper in a cave, right? And we were like, that is not a 3-horn scale pit viper. So when I say we, I'm referring to the people who were involved in the description of the species. We went there many, many times. It's a search for it. The guys who are based in Laos went there something like 6 or 7 times to search for it, came up empty-handed. The first time I went with a couple close friends of mine who are very, very good at turning up stuff. We found a lot of other good stuff that trip, but never managed to find it. Last October, I was so dedicated to finding this. I wanted to find it so badly. It looked so cool. And the concept of there being a new Protobothrops in Southeast Asia, one of my favorite genus, that wasn't discovered yet, I was like, I have to find that. And on the March trip, the April trip we did, we spoke to some local villagers, and they told us that actually you don't want to focus on caves. We've been focusing on crawling around these cave systems looking for it before, because the only pictures we'd seen had been within caves. They said, we actually never see them in caves. We see them along the side of limestone karst formations along the cliffs next to streams. So I was like, you know what, when I come back, I think I'm going to ignore caves, maybe just dip into them when it's convenient, and I'm going to hike deep into these karst formations. Literally the first night I was there, the very first night, I'm heading along this thing, and there it is. It just appeared in front of me, and that's it. I couldn't believe it. It felt like too good to be true, especially after so much effort had gone into finding it in the past, not just from me, but from other people. But it was just there, exactly where we expected it to be.
And how big was it? What does it look like?
It was about, I think it was 80-something centimeters, 83, 84, 85.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact measurement right now, like 85 cm, let's say. It was a younger female. I think they definitely grow a lot larger than that. And it's like kind of like a yellowish brown coloration with a yellow nose and a yellow tail and these black kind of markings throughout the body, these black kind of cross bands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's the newest viper found in the world.
No. There's already new vipers found after that. There's new vipers churned out all the time. And a lot of them are like based on genetic splits of what we call complexes. So you'll have one species, let's say large-eyed pit viper, which occurs all across like Indochina in different limestone karst areas. And they mostly look the same, but there's small differences between them. And researchers will collect specimens, run the genetics, look at the morphological differences, combine them both and describe it as a new species.
Right.
But those have been known and people have seen them in these areas many, many times in the past. There's a big difference between that as a new species and our new lancehead, which is that this was the first specimen ever collected, ever found. There was 3 pictures in the past we managed to dig up from people seeing them, because Van Vieng's an incredibly touristy area. Tourists go there all the time for caving, and a few people had seen them in caves and taken blurry photos. But this is like a new, completely novel species in a way that a lot of these new species described after that are not. I think that's a very important distinguish.
Okay, I got it. I understand.
Distinction.
So, what are some of the rarer species that are here in Southeast Asia?
Oh man, there's so many species that have been seen like once ever. There's no picture of them existing. They're just like one specimen lost in science. Like you look at a place like Sumatra, there's so many snakes there which are just described, have a name, but it's like there's no way of knowing what they even look like. The papers are like not even findable. They were described in some old publication by some person. There's so many like that. What we tend to focus on a little bit more is more larger and targetable species which have either not been found because the places they occur are difficult to access, or just that people haven't tried, let's say, enough.
Are we losing species before they can even be found? Is that a possibility with the amount of deforestation that's happening?
It's hard to say. It's definitely possible. But in terms of how the general distribution trends of reptiles, let's talk about reptiles here and amphibians in Southeast Asia, it's likely that they are not just restricted to these tiny areas, but without a doubt it has happened. For sure, there is certain patches maybe of area which were bulldozed many, many, many years ago, which may have had an endemic frog which lived just in a swamp there. Or say a limestone karst formation that was destroyed from mining that may have had an endemic gecko or even an endemic snake.
Right.
Problem is we just don't know. I would be inclined to say limited on the front of reptiles in Southeast Asia, but it's very, very possible that it may have happened.
And the Southeast Asian rainforest, is it considered the oldest rainforest in the world?
I think so.
It is?
I think so, yeah.
And, okay, you know how in South America they have some of these kind of spires that have their own ecosystems where only one species could live. Do we have anything like that
There's
here?
a lot of places like that here.
Okay.
Yeah. Like we call it like cloud islands.
Right.
That's one of the phrases we use for like tips of mountains, which may be isolated for a very, 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 hundreds of thousands, millions of years from nearby areas, which have a patch of montane forest at the top where a unique species has evolved.
Have you had any chance to explore any of these?
Yeah, many times, yeah. I find, though, from my experience, that limestone karst formations, you're familiar with what those are, like Batu caves?
Yeah.
So like these just limestone rock outcrops that come out of the ground like a freaking skyscraper, basically.
Yeah.
We found those to be have a lot more higher rates of endemism than even the Cloud Islands.
Okay.
Because all these crevices and all this like unique biotope that occurs on these, and the fact that they stand isolated, often when all the forest around them gets bulldozed, creates high rates of speciesism.
So when you say something like that, it reminds me of Langkawi's Geopark and Mulu Caves out in Borneo. So would those be areas that have a high concentration of different snakes?
You can be sure that both those areas will have endemic reptiles.
Okay.
For snakes, we're kind of only just getting into the endemism these places hold. So the new species we have in Thailand, Oligodon speleoserpens, we call it the cave kukri snake, is endemic to these limestone karst formations near the border of Malaysia. And we believe, our theory is, that there could be very, very similar kukris occurring in limestone karst formations throughout the peninsula, throughout Southeast Asia. Indeed, we have a lot of evidence to support this. And another new species that's called Oligodon cicadophagus, the cicada-eating kukri snake, was described from just like some karst formations north of speleoserpens. While we don't have the genetics to back up whether there's actually a difference between the two, I found both of those before they were ever described based on our theory that there should be endemic kukri snakes. And I believe there should be in Langkawi and there should be in other limestone karst formations in Peninsular Malaysia, which are just waiting to be described.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you are at the frontier. I mean, your life is a very interesting life, right? I mean, you're doing all the expeditions that people dream of. I mean, a lot of this stuff
I'm not sure how many people dream of catching snakes. A very niche amount of people.
Well, you dreamt of it as a kid. And what does that feel like when you catch one? Like, is there an adrenaline rush? Like, it must be like hitting the lotto or something, right?
Nothing can compare to the feeling of when you've been grinding, like you've been hiking, your muscles hurt, you've been going up and down these steep hillsides, cutting your way through the forest, seeing nothing, or seeing what we call nothing sometimes, which is nothing good, and then it appears in front of you. Like you're hiking through the forest and all of a sudden the thing you've been visualizing in your mind for days, maybe even months, maybe even years before, like that Sulu temple viper I was telling you about, when it appears in front of you, man, that's a feeling which I feel like nothing describes, like nothing compares to. Like that amount of effort going towards something and to see it visualized before you, materialize, just a very, very like satisfying feeling.
So, all right, I'm going to bring this up because not only do you have your own group of guys, but you guys also bring people out, right?
Yeah.
To go and find reptiles and snakes and any kind of, essentially, any kind of reptile.
Yeah,
right?
we do like highly specialized trips for people who are really interested in seeing and or photographing like rare reptiles, or maybe not even rare, just impressive reptiles in Southeast Asia.
What are the most sought after?
I think Malcolm's pit viper in Borneo. It's endemic to the Crocker Range, so Mount Kinabalu in the highland forests. I think that draws maybe more people than anyone else.
Wow.
Any other species.
Why?
Yeah.
Why does it draw more people?
Just it's incredible. Just you have to look at it and see for yourself. It's a viper that grows to 1.5 meters. It's thick like this in the mid body, and it's bright like yellowish green and black spotted all over. It's just very impressive. And you know, culture evolves around certain species, and certain species will develop their own hype, which gets circled around communities and stuff like that. And certain species just have more clout, as we call it.
Yeah, speaking of culture and mythology around snakes and reptiles for that matter, do you see that? Have you experienced that in your travels?
Yeah, I see proximity to that a lot. You know, going to remote areas, and you know, we do a lot of work with local people, local guides, and just local guides, and just local guys that I know that basically I find on Facebook. Some of them aren't even like, they don't never been looking for a snake before in their lives. I find them like, hey man, can you help them with it? Help us with this. We want to go to this place, find these things. But I wouldn't say it's something I take much interest in myself. I'm very much down to just the pragmatism of let's find this snake.
Right, but meeting with some of these people who are following myths or superstitions or anything like that, has that ever led you to finding a new area where some of these snakes might exist?
I don't know, but in China, some random old man we found in a village led us to some cave on top of a mountain. And we found what we were looking for there. Probably one of the best snakes I ever saw in my life. And maybe that has a lot of mythology to him. But I'm not a big fan of the general superstitions and mythology when it comes to the jungle, not just snakes as a whole. And I know I may be offending a lot of Malaysian people here because Malaysia is got to be one of the countries where they believe in ghosts the most. Okay, they love ghosts in Southeast Asia. But it's bad because it just means that all the people here are just terrified of going into the forest, especially at night, and experiencing what it has to offer. And whenever something I film or do goes viral with Malaysians, I just get a billion questions like, oh, what do you do about ghosts? Do you not see any ghosts when you're out there? And I'm like, guys, ghosts only appear if you hold a Malaysian passport.
Yeah, I remember, we talked about this earlier. I remember I shot a film in Borneo in 2012. And we were filming deep in the jungle. I mean, we were deep. You had to drive 4 hours outside of Kuching to Batangai. And then once we got to the dam, we had to take a little dugout canoe across the dam, down through some of these estuaries and rivers that came off of the dam for another 45 minutes to an hour. We had to carry the boats, lift up the boats because the water was not deep enough. And then once we reached the longhouse, which was amazing in itself, just experiencing the culture. And I want you to think about some of the cultures that you've experienced while doing this, because I'm sure you've experienced some interesting ones, because the Borneo headhunter culture to me is fascinating. But once we got into the jungle eventually and we're filming, especially at night, we had a crew with us. And I remember we're filming and we're yelling into the jungle like, whoa, whoa, don't yell into the jungle at night. That's bad luck. That's bad. Okay. I never heard of this before. And now when we're looking at creating films and stories for films, some of the ideas that come up are, they have all these different mystics that can be in the jungle or ghosts that can be in the jungle and
Spirits.
can take you. And I think a lot of that also came before Islam was here in some of the Orang Asli communities. There was a lot of animism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure you've definitely got to meet some interesting cultures and experience some interesting cultures while on some of these expeditions.
For sure, but in terms of things you need to watch out for in the forest, I think the spirits that can take you away are really the least of your concerns. When you've experienced being in places with tigers and especially elephants, which are a lot more abundant, you understand that there are real material things in the jungle which can get you. And honestly, the most dangerous thing is probably falling on your ass. Honestly, the worst thing that ever happened to me was falling over. So.
Yeah, I remember the first real expedition I ever did into the jungle was in Vietnam. It was in a place that was called Jungle Beach, which is kind of north of Trang, I think. And we were tracking these white duoc monkeys. I think the white duoc langurs, excuse me. I think that's the black duoc langurs, and they had these bright white tails. And this was my first time in Southeast Asia, so this was 2006. And I just remember going into the jungle, and it was like everything is protecting itself. Everything is dangerous. If you slip on mud and you go to grab a tree, that tree could have spikes that are this long, right? It can fuck your hand up. It can chew your hand up pretty good.
A centipede on it, which can leave you in agonizing pain for 3 days straight.
Yeah, so that's actually part of the story. We got up at 4 o'clock in the morning while it was still dark, bushwhacked up the top of this mountain, and we get up there and we finally find where these langurs had spent the night, and the whole troop comes flying across, and you just see these gigantic white tails that are about this long, and then it starts to pour. So we take refuge under this overhanging cliff, and there was a centipede about this large, just crawling around, right, sharing this dry space with us, and we had to be careful until it was time to go down. And then when it's time to go down, now it's all muddy. So you're going down the mountain and it's muddy, and you have to be careful because it's slippery. And if you want to grab onto a branch, be careful because there are those spikes that are that long.
Yeah. Many, many horrible things I've experienced. But in going back to your previous question about cultures, it's kind of difficult to experience that in many ways I've found, especially as a lot of places we go, they kind of cater, change things towards tourists or treat you a certain way, or they're expecting people to go there. One of the most interesting places I went was China.
Okay.
And China was definitely like going to Guangxi, which is like, I guess, one of the most poor provinces in like China on the Vietnam border. Just felt like that was a really, really unique place with a lot of very unique people and unique villages and unique landscape. Everything was very cool about it.
What made it so unique?
It's just a fascinating, you know the history of China. It's just fascinating how that country emerges and how the different like ethnocultural groups like exist in the different corners of the country. And seeing like the China as somewhere that's developed so much in recent years. And it's a crazy combination between like a Southeast Asian rural feeling, but like extremely modern and high quality infrastructure. Just found that was very interesting. Plus they have a lot of the traditional like ethnical buildings and places left there, which, you know, aren't seen too often in that region. Not often travel Guangxi.
And, you know, just now you also said you've been injured quite a few times, right? Can you give me any?
I'll go on a little rant
give me
here,
some juice.
actually. A lot of people are like, oh man, you're living the dream. And I 100% understand it is the dream for me, but at the same time, I can't ignore the toll that doing this basically full-time for 3 years has taken on my body. So first and foremost, we'll look at like just basic injuries. So I can tell you, man, I'd be bitten by a pit viper any day over breaking my wrist again. Like that was without a doubt the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. Like not just in terms of the pain and like how it affected my mobility, but also the way it affects your mentality, like your mind being injured like that and not being able to like do anything for ages.
Right.
Not to mention that, you know, I've got all kinds of other like various problems. So my ankle is bad. I don't even know why, it just is, right? Just one day I just started getting like a pain building up in my ankle and now it's always like there. My knee, like freaking tendons got so badly damaged a couple years back, never quite, and I just feel it taking its toll. And then you get onto like the development of allergies, which you get from exposure to toxins. So let's say 3 years ago when I first came out, if I got stung by a wasp or stung by a plant, I wouldn't even blink twice, just keep on going. Now, if I get stung by a plant, I just break out in like hives all over my body and I'm so allergic. I have to wear like long sleeves all the time. Wasp stings, man, I got a wasp sting the other day. Couldn't walk on my foot afterwards. It stung me on my ankle. And like just for days after, just constant irritation all over my body. I had to keep taking antihistamines. And you develop allergies to being bitten by snakes. So because I told you I take out people who are interested in like doing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of the time they want to see things. So I catch a lot of snakes that I wouldn't otherwise. And a lot of snakes like to bite, especially like some of the more harmless ones. And it's kind of inevitable that you will get bitten by them, especially when you're helping people with photography. And you know, you develop sensitivities, and now a certain species of snake like bite me and chew on me for like maybe like 10 seconds or something, I'll start getting like a rash or pain emerging there. So yeah, there's various like physical tolls it takes.
Do you think any of that has to do with the venom that was injected into your body at some point?
It could. I think those quantities that I received were quite low dose, and I don't think but it's really hard to say. Would generally, if you aren't injecting yourself with microdosing on a regular basis, the more times you get bitten by a venomous snake, the worse it progressively gets over time. So would it be worse next time because my body's already like had something of those toxins working within it? Maybe.
So yeah, because that's fascinating. You know, like, I'm just wondering what it is that causes these allergic reactions.
It's got to be some boring scientific explanation to this. It's just like some kind of exposure, isn't it? It's like, we all know if you get exposed to a certain thing for like too long, and it's very well known amongst these communities, especially with toxins, the more like occasional exposure you get. I guess I had a couple big exposures and I feel like they were major catalysts.
Right.
Like I had certain incidents, like I bumped a wasp nest once and just got hammered like God knows how many times up my arm. That is enough to cause a sensitivity. Like from that point onwards, I remember I
Are these murder hornets we're talking about? Are the Southeast Asian murder hornets?
Fortunately not.
Okay.
This is just some little like paper wasp, right? I've been bitten by like all kinds of wasps, but I've never been like, fortunately, the only time I got hit multiple times was by just like a normal black and yellow paper wasp, right?
Okay.
But I remember I got stung by a couple plants once where the reaction was so bad at the time, and I feel like it was never the same after that incident. So in my opinion, like I could be wrong about this, it's very bad exposure to it, like very serious cases which cause a long-term like sensitivity, which is exacerbated by more exposure. In 2023 it was, man, I had to take a break from like bushwhacking through the forest, which was traditionally like one of the most common methods of getting around. I spent like 3-4 months where I basically didn't walk off an open trail or an open road, just to let my body get away from that just for a bit, because it was getting to the point that every time I went out in the jungle, I'd have fucking hives on my body, and that is not fun, I'll tell you that much.
No. Do you know what kind of plants cause these things?
Any plant. It can be any, just any venomous plant. Yeah.
And there's so many of them here.
Yeah, there's so many of them. Right. And most people will barely have an effect to them. It's just if you're like allergic to them. Think about it. 3 years ago, I wasn't allergic to
that's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild. And you know, imagine like the trailblazers, right? Imagine these guys who came out here hundreds of years ago and were doing these.
Could you? Really big difference between what they did and what we do. Yes, they were experiencing it in a raw form, which is like quite unlike anything now.
Right.
But also those early like British like colonial explorers did basically have local people to carry them.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? And local people did everything. And I think a huge aspect of the discoveries they made was basically just sending villagers out into the jungle and being like, bring us back, shoot and bring back anything you can find, basically. Like, bring back anything. That was their methodology traditionally.
Okay.
But for sure, there were certain explorers who were just going like wild through the forest, and a lot of those guys died.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the guy who founded Fraser's Hill, or Fraser's Hill was named after. I think he was part of the founding process of it as well. That guy just disappeared.
Right.
He just completely disappeared. So
that's fascinating. All right, I want to touch on the. All right, so tell me some other stuff. I know that the life that you lead is extremely unique. So you've got to have stories that you know nobody else has experienced.
Well, I mean, anybody can experience these stories if they just go out walking in the jungle. I mean, someone who goes out walking in the jungle is probably more likely to have a crazy experience than I am, because if they're not as familiar with it, and they're more likely to end up in trouble. But no matter how like experienced you are, there's still situations that can get a little almost out of control, I'd say. One of the most like ones I tell the most to people is I got chased by an elephant in southern Thailand, right? That was definitely one of the most traumatic experiences I had, and I swear that's left me scarred to this day. I never liked elephants to begin with, by the way. I don't like large megafauna. It interferes with my operations, okay? I don't like trying to look for snakes and knowing that there is some huge beast that could just come around at any second in the jungle, all right? But it's something we deal with all the time, especially in Sumatra, especially in southern Thailand. And one of the places, it was the last night of the trip, and I was so keen to get into this really, really deep area of jungle like that I had never hiked to before. And on the way up, I was seeing elephant footprints everywhere. That's normal. This place always has elephant footprints, but I'd never seen an elephant at this location before. They're very secretive, and when they hear or see lights coming, they always disappear a bit into the jungle, and they can just sit far enough back and be quiet so you don't see them. But as I was walking up this stream, I was just walking a stream, there's no trails here.
And this is at night?
Yeah, this is at night, already pitch black. I've obviously just got my headlamp. I was supposed to be with someone else, but for whatever reason, he got slowed down and he knew the general direction to go, so I was just on my own. And I noticed that the water was like brown, you know, and usually it's crystal clear. And that means that there's something stirring up the water. It always means that. And I've seen that in this exact location before, but other people walk there. You get local villagers who go up to shoot animals or to, I don't know if I should say this, but to smuggle stuff over the border to Malaysia on this particular trail, right? So people going up and down there, and the people there, no matter what, they're very, very friendly. We like familiar with them. So I was like, it's probably just some local guys who are up there like hunting or something, right? But I am very cautious already at this point, and this is crucial that I was already on edge because of the fresh elephant tracks and the fact that the water was stirred up, because I know obviously a large mammal can do that too. And as I was going up, I was just taking a careful look round corners. And I get into this kind of open area with the stream where there's a very steep bank where like a landslide has fallen away on one side and then just like jungle on a flat area on the left. And all of a sudden I hear something huge like crack in the jungle. And immediately I was like, oh, hell no, like this is not good. So I start like creeping towards the edge of the stream and I'm thinking, what can it be? Most likely it's just like a sambar deer or something. Because there's these huge deer and other animals in the jungle which are totally harmless, which have spooked me countless times in the past. I've been like frightened, had my life shocked like after hearing them suddenly move next to me, like these very big but harmless animals. I was thinking, it's never been an elephant before. Why would it be this time, right? And then I hear another like very big crack, and it's a clear sign that it's not an animal running away. It's an animal moving nervously.
Oh.
Right? And that was when the most deafening, like trumpeting screech just comes out of the jungle, maybe 5 meters away from me. And I realize I'm like just a few meters away from an elephant. And I shine my light in and I can see its eye. And you should never shine your light in an elephant at night. That scares them so badly. The thing with elephants is they're terrified. They're the most easily spooked animals on the planet. They're spooked by anything. If an elephant sees a snake, it starts panicking, okay? So imagine if it sees a human who has potential to shoot and harm it, right? I'm like, oh my, I might die here. So I run and I start climbing this bank on the left and I go about maybe 4 meters up and I like tuck myself into a cubby and I just stay there. And of course I switched my light off immediately because the lights scare the elephants more than anything. And I can hear it moving there. I don't know, maybe it was trapped, maybe there's some vegetation it couldn't get through on the other side or another steep bank, but it was just there and it was just there staring at me through this thing. And I was thinking, I have to get out of here. But I was like, maybe it will just move off on its own. So I was like, I'm going to wait here with my light on. I waited for a while.
With the light on?
Yeah, with the light off, sorry.
Okay,
like
with
waiting with the light off.
Okay.
And I turned the light on, shone in, and then all of a sudden it just comes like out from the vegetation towards me. And I was like, I gotta go. So I jumped up the last ledge up to the top and just ran through the forest, just freaking sprinted. I don't know if it was following me. I was like, did not want to take a chance. Because this is real. Like this animal could just easily kill me. I don't know if you've ever, are familiar with how dangerous elephants are, but they can kill a person in a few seconds.
Oh, yeah.
Just like that. Like if they want to, they'll just kill you. They'll just squash you like a rat, like a cockroach.
I couldn't imagine just facing an elephant one-on-one in the middle of the jungle at night. That's got to be the most intimidating.
It must have looked like I seen a ghost. I was white, sweating everywhere. Like I just basically ran until I felt like I was out of its like easy periphery, and then I speed walked back to like where other people were, where there was like more like I knew it wasn't gonna try and follow me, right? And when I got there, you never guess what happened. I got stung by a massive freaking hornet immediately as I got back to the main area. So on top of being like chased by an elephant and being traumatized, my whole arm is swelled up like I got bitten by a snake because a freaking massive wasp stung me.
The dangers of herping in Southeast Asia.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be very, what's the opposite of benign? Hostile.
The
jungle can be very hostile.
If anything, I would think the jungle is the most hostile environment probably in the world.
Definitely has a lot of obstacles to overcome, for sure. In terms of like just impenetrable jungle, spiky plants, stinging things, dangerous animals, whatever. It's just very, very challenging. After these expeditions we do, especially like the big ones we used to do when we first came out, and I was like trying to explore as much as possible. Whenever the trip finished, just covered in cuts, bruises, thorns embedded in me everywhere, leech bites all over my body. Leeches are another thing which I'm completely used to, but to other people, they hear about leeches and they're like, oh my God.
Oh God, there's so many leeches in Malaysia. I've had the experience of having leeches all over. Yeah, not good.
Land leeches are a very specific breed which you don't really get in other parts of the world other than like Asia. And in Malaysia, these tropical areas, man, they just love it. They're just having a field day in these regions. You go walking around KL, there's still like leeches everywhere.
And all right, so you're in this jungle, and this jungle is super dense. It's super thick. How do you guys navigate? What do you use? Use a compass, like GPS? If there's no signal, how do you navigate? What happens?
Yeah, I just always use a GPS.
Okay.
Just always use this. I have a GPS app on my phone, And for the most part, you get I've got so much experience with jungle hiking. I know if I get lost, I'd always find my way out. I always have a fantastic mental image of the forest beforehand. And because of just how we study the area in terms of orchestrating our trips and our walks and whatnot, and just coordinating how we're going to attack the area, I'm familiar with the valley structure. I know that this stream leads this way, this stream exits this way. If you follow the stream this far down, it exits the jungle. So I feel very comfortable. That said, it's not fun being lost, I'll tell you that much. And I have been lost when I either forgot to turn my GPS on, or in the years before I ever had a GPS. And I'll tell you, man, you lose track of your surroundings so quickly. And everybody knows this, but once panic sets in, even if it's just very mild, you find it even harder to remember and reorientate yourself. And you can be somewhere that you totally recognize that you've walked many times before, but if your brain got turned around, you won't recognize it anymore. You just won't recognize it. So going into the jungle in somewhere which doesn't have clear defined paths, or a river which you can always use to orientate yourself to get out, incredibly dangerous if you don't have a GPS.
And can't your mind start playing tricks on you as well while you're in there? If you're in there for a long period of time.
I feel like I have a very strong mind, but you remind me of a specific example where I was sure I was lost, right? It was back when I was 18 years old. I was lost. I was sure that I was going uphill. And then I finally found my way to something that I recognized, and all of a sudden, all the jigsaw pieces come together. I knew where I was, and I was going downhill.
Yeah.
How is it even possible that I was going downhill, and I was convinced I was going up towards the stream somehow? So yeah, I guess it does.
Yeah, that's strange. And have you had any experiences in any of your expeditions with your colleagues where somebody's gotten lost, or you've had to do a search and rescue party or anything like that?
Oh, hell no. Yeah, of course, man. I've had that happen too many times. Fortunately, most times they show up again pretty quickly afterwards. But one time we lost one of our friends for an entire night. And I genuinely thought he was dead.
Oh,
God. I actually thought there was a solid chance that he was dead. So we were in Omkhoi district in northwest Thailand looking for one of the unicorn species, as you call it, this species, the Omkhoi lance-headed pit viper that I'd never seen. We brought a big group and we drive 3 hours on a dirt road. You don't have signal for the last 2 hours of the road to get out to the most remote part of Thailand, the statistically most remote area. It's just small villages that barely even have electricity.
Okay.
Here, no phone service at all.
Okay.
And then just jungle. And somehow we had such a clear plan of what to do, but when it came to the time to meet up, he just wasn't there. We spent the next few hours searching everywhere that we'd been, everywhere that we felt like he could possibly be, and he just wasn't there. Tried everything possible, and we had to leave the next day as well, which made it even more stressful. And it was so not good. We tried to wake up the villagers. They were just not willing to help us on this occasion. And that stirred up a little bit of unease because, you're in somewhere that's so dark, so remote. You don't know the people there. You don't trust them. You don't trust their attitude towards outsiders. Thai people and the Thai villagers, these are the Karen tribes people, generally they're very, very kind, very trustworthy, but you never know. There's murders all the time in these remote parts of Thailand.
Yeah.
And we rendezvoused, and some of the guys were insistent that they heard gunshots in the forest. Now, this isn't abnormal at all anywhere in Thailand. Local people are always hunting birds and pigs and other things in the jungle at night, no matter what, right? But this added another layer to already cortisol-fueled situation. And we waited in this village. We were supposed to leave at 11. We waited until 3 a.m. in the morning, and he just never showed up. Did so many search parties into the jungle. It didn't seem possible either that he could be lost. And this is where the thing about mental tricks comes into play, right? When you get lost and panic sets in, you do things which don't make sense.
Right.
Cutting the long story short, the next day we woke up super early and we drove all the way back into the village, had no means of contacting. Woke up, didn't have any message from him. And I drive into the village. If he's not there, there is something seriously bad has gone wrong and we have a real problem, and then we have to contact authorities. And that is not a good thing. That is not what we want, especially when you operate trips which are supposed to be respectable or you're supposed to be trustworthy. Obviously, this wasn't a trip where people were paying to be on. This was just a few trips of a few close friends of mine. This was a little trip with some friends. But I was like, one of our friends there was on leave from the army, and he's not even supposed to be in that area. So the army would find out about that, and he'd be freaking like court-martialed or some shit, and it was just an awful situation for everyone involved. And the level of anxiety I felt driving to that village, like I felt sick. I genuinely felt like I was going to be sick. If his freaking stuff isn't there, if he's not there and we arrive, we have a big, big problem. We drive into the village. We drive to where we had all met up in the school the night before, and I could see his freaking camera sitting there. And the relief I felt in that moment, turns out, he followed some buffalo because he thought the buffalo would lead him to a farmland or someone's house. It was only after a while that he realized the buffalo are completely free roaming and they just roam completely into the jungle. And then he was really lost.
Oh, God.
And it turned out he actually got back to the village just like 30 minutes after we left.
Oh, wow. So
his concept was if he went upstream, he could get up to a point where he could see and find a way back. And his lights had died. He had some battery problem with his lamp, a whole host of things that just combined to be really unfortunate. In the long run, it was just a very unfortunate turn of events. But
how far was the village where you found him from the place that you guys were searching?
Oh, not far at all.
Oh, God.
Not far at all. But he had gone up into some area which was very difficult to make your way back from, especially when you have dim lights. And what he claims is that he saw our lights, or one of our lights, on the final search party that we did. Saw it just shine somewhere in the valley. Right?
Okay.
And that was what inspired him to head back, but we just left by the time he got back. Yeah, so we spent a night camping in the village, yeah. But that was a pretty funny situation. The fact that he saw a buffalo's ass, and his first thought was if not a friend, why are you friend-shaped? And decided to follow that into the jungle. Never not be funny to me.
Oh my gosh.
Getting lost because you follow the ass of a buffalo through the jungle.
And that was, you said, in the northwest of Thailand where the Karen tribe is.
I think it's the Karen people inhabit that western forest complex of Burma. They may have a specific name, but it's I think it's the.
Is that the
Karen
tribe that's
people.
known for the long necks?
No.
No. Okay.
No, they're just a generic Southeast Asian hill tribe. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I mean. You have a lot of experience with these different tribes and cultures, but typically you don't get a chance to experience the culture itself. You're there purely for the exploration.
Pragmatism and business. Yeah,
right,
very much. I don't know. I'm kind of awkward around people and these local people. They don't speak a word of English. Sometimes, we have food with them. Sometimes we've been there with friends that speak their language and we have a conversation, but that's about it. I've had some nice encounters, some Burmese, you get these Burmese refugee villages just not far northwest of Thailand. And you get people in there that randomly speak English because girls from Europe in their early 20s or whatever go out and do some volunteering program where they teach English in these villages for a few months of the year. So you'll randomly find some people in these villages who speak English, and I've had some nice experiences talking to them.
How about have in your line of work, are you exploring caves? I mean, I know you mentioned Laos where you were looking at the caves there, but do you frequently go into caves and do some splunking, or is it purely how does that fit into the whole agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like caves, but I also love caves.
Okay.
Caves are a great place to explore, and a lot of rare frogs and reptiles, especially lizards and snakes, will use caves as a refuge or a place to hunt. So yeah, we're exploring caves all the time. I wouldn't say that generally I'm not rappelling down into a cave or going into those tunnels, where the Nutty Putty cave where that guy got trapped upside down.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that story, right?
Worst
Tons
place
of
to
memes
die.
about it, right?
Yeah.
generally I prefer not doing that. But I've been through so many like tight caverns, scraped myself all up in search of like various snakes and other reptiles.
Like I got down a rabbit hole of watching videos of that, and they're just the most anxiety-inducing videos you could possibly imagine, where
Yeah.
it's just so tight,
Yeah.
or where somebody keeps going, and then they just can't go any further because it's a dead end.
It gets too like narrow. They can't
Yeah.
even fit their body into it anymore.
Yeah.
Now, I've been to this cave in southern China, man. That we were looking for this ridiculous rat snake that gets huge. It lives in caves, and I remember one cave. Like some of my guys couldn't get out of it. That was kind of scary.
Yeah,
Like
I'll say.
the only way I was able to get myself out was basically lying on my back in pure mud and using these angles to levy myself up and push myself up because it's just too slippery to get a grip and the hole is too tight. And my friend Tinken, who's Chinese, is even bigger than me, right? He's taller and bigger than me. This guy was friggin' like trapped there for like 5-10 minutes, and we're trying. And in the end, we had to like basically haul him out through the cave. So every now and again, there's a situation. I mean, the feeling I can never shake when I'm inside a cave is that the whole thing is going to collapse and I'm just going to get trapped there.
Yeah.
Especially when a lot of the time I've never told anyone that I'm even going inside. So
Yeah, I'll say that's pretty fucking
that's
dangerous.
usually a good thing to do, is to like tell someone where you're going. But certain trips, it's like I don't even plan necessarily on going inside the cave, and I am confident that the cave will not collapse. But I still have that burning in the back of my mind when I'm inside, and I'm like, I don't know. Not to mention, like certain caves are like maze systems.
Right. And you document these trips. Do you document these trips?
Yeah, I do, generally. I have a YouTube channel with 20-something thousand subscribers,
What's it called?
Rupert Reptiles.
Rupert Reptiles, same as the Instagram channel?
Yeah, same as the Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Where I upload just basically short, like iPhone film, not short, kind of long, iPhone filmed vlogs from all the trips I do. And I mean, sometimes it's not capable to film, but I try and film as much as possible. And some of the videos are pretty damn fun, like the one we were talking about, that Sulu Archipelago Tawi Tawi one is one of the best videos I ever uploaded. Some of the other Philippines ones I've done as well, like going to
Yeah, I mean, that's
more
pretty
remote
wild. I
places.
don't think people understand how dangerous that area is. I mean, those are the same people that invaded Malaysia not very long ago in the
Yeah, they
Lahadatu
launched
area.
a literal invasion of Malaysia. Yeah.
Right.
And that story's still ongoing, right?
Yeah, there was a lawsuit, I think, right?
Well,
And
the
it's-
largest lawsuit ever awarded or something like that.
Yeah.
The amount that Malaysia was ordered to pay to them is like 1/3 of Malaysia's annual GDP.
Yeah, it was several $billion
Yeah.
because apparently they had leased the land from the Sulu Sultan, 100 years ago, and they were still paying the same amount of rent.
So at the time,
over the
it was a British protectorate, right? And the British were paying the Sultan of Sulu and their family a stipend as like a rent for the land.
Right.
And when Malaysia became like an independent state, at the time, the amount that they were being paid by the British was actually like fine at the time when you adjusted for inflation. And the most important fact, which is going to come up now, that after the Malaysians like claimed that land, discovered oil off Sabah.
Right.
And then Sabah became the most GDP productive state for Malaysia, the country. Here, it became the most it generates the most wealth for Malaysia, Sabah. And they were being paid literally like $250 off like a $500 a month. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was like nothing. So that like some members of the royal family were receiving literally like 2 pennies per month or something like that. Something ridiculous.
Yeah.
When Malaysia generated like a huge portion of its GDP off their land.
Right. Well,
If you want to start talking about land rights and things like that, it's such an awkward and difficult conversation because land rights spans back like hundreds of years, centuries and centuries of conquest between different people. So it's very hotly contended, but they won the lawsuit against Malaysia.
Yeah, I can't believe it. I think that's because Malaysia didn't take it seriously. I don't even think they showed up for it. It was a major problem. I don't think they showed up for the hearing.
Yeah.
And the judge just declared it in the favor of the Philippines. So now they have to appeal and actually take it seriously and actually fight it back. And
I mean,
I'm sure that they'll get it reduced.
As much as possible. I'm sure it'll be reduced, but it's still a crazy story. It's got to be one of the craziest stories that wasn't really made public until recently. There's a movie that was made about it, right?
I don't know about the land rights, but I know about the Lahadatu.
The Lahadatu invasion. There was like a movie that was made about that.
Yeah, there was. There were
But
several
in terms
people
of the
killed.
full story, there's so much potential for this to evolve in coming years and to make one of the craziest stories you've ever heard. From obviously the original, where a bunch of old men with outdated weapons tried to invade Malaysia, which is already hilarious as it is, to them winning the lawsuit and the historical and like very like dramatic disputes between that internal royal family as well, all makes a very good drama. I feel
It
like
is
someone
very
could make a good movie out of it one day.
Yeah. Talk about movies. I mean, and the Sulu people. A friend of mine introduced me to a story about an American special operative who was also Taiwanese, and his a family friend of his was one of the people that got kidnapped by the Sultan, by the Sulu, by Abu Sayyaf or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the Taiwanese government called him in to ask him to consult, and he went in illegally, whereas the Filipino government said, don't help this guy, but he brought in basically mercenaries, and then the Filipino army wanted to help him, and they came in and they extricated the woman quite swiftly, in like 3 or 4 days or something like that.
I've read all the stories. Actually, after we did that trip, then I was like, now I'm going to read about this shit.
Yeah.
So then I was like, I read every one of these stories, and I mean, some of them were so traumatic. Some guys were kept there for months and months upon end, being fed nothing, basically starved half to death, like tortured through starvation, just moved from one camp to another with this aim, with this hope that they would either be let go or that there would be a ransom paid for them.
That's what that's the whole point. They want to ransom these guys, and if they cannot ransom them to help further their cause, then they make a very bad example out of you.
Very famous story. It was one of Justin Trudeau, the Canadian ex-prime minister. One of his first big things he had to deal with in his, is he a president? Is he a president?
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, yeah. In his tenure was the fact that a Canadian millionaire was kidnapped by these people, and he refused to communicate with them to do anything. And that guy was executed.
Yeah, they cut his head off.
There was a guy from Norway who was captured with him. Norwegian people, his family, whatever, they paid the ransom. And that guy was released. I think the other person, the women that were captured with them, I think these guys may have had Filipino wives or someone from Southeast Asia. They were like let go in the end, but the one guy, the Canadian millionaire, was killed, and it's a whole incredible stories about this.
Yeah, I traveled to that area when I was there diving in Sipadan. There on the Malaysian side, but it's still very close to that area. There were Malaysian naval forces at the resort that we were staying at.
Yeah, that whole region's very, very dangerous to sail around. There's still kidnappings to this day from that sea.
Yeah.
The Sulu Sea, it's called.
Yep.
The Sulu Sea, still pirates who operate either for a personal gain or for political reasons, still very, very prominent in that region. Like a YouTuber, a vlogger, was kidnapped in Zamboanga del Norte not that long ago.
Oh, really?
Just last year.
I went to a place in the heart of the Sulu Sea. There was an island. God, I can't remember the name of the island, but I think it was part of this like Turtle Islands chain off of Sandakan there, and it was in the middle. We had to pass these like fishing huts that were in the middle of the ocean. I mean, it was remote. This island, it was so small you could walk around it in 10 minutes. But again, there was an army base with sandbags and machine guns on the ready, just in case. We were there to try and see turtles lay eggs on the beach.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I mean, there were sharks literally just swimming right up to the shore beach. You could be eating dinner. There were baby sharks that were this big, just swimming right up to shore. It was quite, and the scuba diving was amazing. It was called Langkayan. That was the name of the island, Langkayan. And the scuba diving was incredible.
You know, one of the most funny things about my story visiting that, you just reminded me of this. When we came to the airport, we had to check in and sign some like permit things to go onto the island to check in as foreigners, right? And we were chatting to these geezers at the like little hut, and they were telling us, oh, very, very safe here. We have no need for guns, you know, very good. Take one step outside the airport is just military personnel everywhere, like standing around with you. The first thing we did was get a picture with these two army guys with the huge machine guns, like with all their faces covered up.
Well, the war that they had there was crazy. I mean, did you ever see the videos, like the drone flybys of the city that was just totally bombed out? I don't know if that was, I think that was in like Mindanao or somewhere. I'm trying to check the map.
Yeah, I mean,
or Zamboanga, I think, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, it was probably, I feel like Holo Island,
because that's
the one where that was where Abu Sayyaf was concentrated. Although they did kidnap and hold people on Tawi Tawi, and the one that's closest to the mainland as well.
I'm just because I think what I'm referring to is when they eventually wiped Abu Sayyaf out for good. It was like that big war. It was a huge war. I mean, this city was decimated. Do you have pictures of it? Do you know what city it is, Fahad?
It's the one on Holo Island. It's the city on one of those islands.
It's Mindanao. I'm pretty sure it's Mindanao.
Mindanao. Yeah, they're considered Mindanao.
Yeah. It was, I mean, that city was ravaged. It looked like Syria or something like that.
That was Duterte's last big stand before his term was due to end, and it was going to be the end of his time in government. You know, he vowed to wipe out these gangs, and they went for it for real at the end. And to be fair, it actually did work.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've seen the fallout from that in recent times. You know, there's a lot of political instability in the Philippines over the fact that Duterte is being trialed for war crimes because of the fact that some people got caught in the crossfire and maybe some innocent people were killed along the way in that. But it's a very, very interesting debate, and it's very fascinating how the political opinions are split from north and south of the Philippines, and how someone can be elected on a platform. His platform he was elected on, that he would destroy the drug gangs and he would destroy the extremists in the south, in Mindanao, the separatist extremists.
Yeah.
And for all intents and purposes, he did do that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that you do what you were elected on your platform, and then you're trialed for war crimes in Europe.
Yeah, I was very surprised by that. When I heard Duterte was being tried for war crimes, I couldn't believe it.
Meanwhile, certain other individuals that won't be named are just completely immune from this around the world. It's and Duterte, someone who was carrying out what he pledged to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And unfortunately, some innocent people were killed, of course. But
yeah. So, why don't we tell people where they can find you if they do want to go on one of these herping tours? Because I'm really interested in in fact, I might go on a herping tour with you, or we might do an expedition. We'll see.
If you want to do some kind of high quality herping experience in Southeast Asia, just either contact me personally on one of my social medias or go to exploreherpetology.com.
Explore herpetology. Now, you're not only doing snakes, because you guys are looking you're looking for frogs, you're looking for lizards, right?
We do reptiles and amphibians. That's why it's called Explore Herpetology.
Right.
Herpetology is the study of reptiles and amphibians, and the trips that we offer on the website are catered to emulate the feeling of going on a real scientific expedition. That's why it's called Explore Herpetology, because we're not just taking people so they can take a picture of it, we're taking them to come and explore and discover things of us. On some of our expeditions, we found species never seen in Thailand or never seen in Malaysia before. We found completely new species on our expeditions, the frog and other things like that. So there's always a chance when you join these, it's why it's Explore Herpetology, you're being part of that. We're trying to immerse you as much as possible.
So when you're bringing these clients along, they're not official scientific expeditions.
No.
But when you're with your crew, you're doing official scientific expeditions from time to time?
No, we're not. No. Just from time to time. When I go on expeditions with my crew, remember, I am a social media guy more than I am a scientist.
Right.
We are looking to film good videos, to make good content, to get good views. We're looking to take high quality photos. We're looking to get personal satisfaction from finding things we've always dreamed of seeing. And we're looking to boost the profile of ourselves and the company through that, right?
Okay.
If we find something scientifically valuable and we have the contacts to make something happen, that is absolutely how it is. But on a real scientific expedition with real people who are paid full time to do that, they will collect everything they see. They collect and euthanize on site these animals, because to describe things, to get scientific value from them, in their eyes, the way to do that is to collect it. We don't collect animals.
Okay.
To make that very, very clear. that we only collect when we have contacts with the specific permits that allow us to do so with very valuable individuals. We don't just collect left, right, and center for no good purpose. If this is new and this is important, be it for conservation, be it for a description of a new species, we will collect that if we have the right contacts. But I've had to let, as I told you earlier, I've had to let new species go, had to let them go out of my hand back into the jungle, maybe to be found by someone else one day because we don't have the contacts, we don't have the permits. Yeah.
Okay, but you can take, obviously you're taking photos of them, you're documenting them any way that you possibly can without the permits.
I've been on real scientific expeditions as well. I have some friends who occasionally our schedules align so that they would like my help and I'd be happy to join them and be able to do something like that, get a bit more of an insight, learn from them, because there's people that are way more knowledgeable than me who have an understanding of the inner workings of what's being described soon, and all this helps my knowledge. I just want to be as knowledgeable as possible. So it's kind of an exchange of services. They get someone who is extremely good at finding stuff and can contribute to the search effort, contribute financially, whatever it may be, like help chip in to split the costs. And I get an insight into that world and I get to build my knowledge base and experience.
Right. But for example, with the louse, with the viper and louse, you were able to name that viper yourself.
Yeah. It was a team effort, but I suggested the name, named it after its little golden snout, Flavirostris, and everyone liked that. You know, that wasn't even my favorite name personally, but the team, I suggested like 5 different names. That was the one everyone liked the most.
Was there a paper written on that?
Yeah. To describe something, you need to publish a paper through an academic journal. And, you know, the guys we work with, Nick Poyakov, Dr. Tan in Vietnam, Sabira, they're just unreal how good they are at what they do. And, you know, I contributed a lot to that paper. I wrote most of the non-genetic sections of that. I contributed a huge amount to the writing. But without those guys, it wouldn't be possible. And they are so fast, they're so effective, so professional. We were able to publish that in 4 months. You know how ridiculous that is? Like, a lot of new species can take 4 years to be published.
Wow.
So. And
where did that get published?
Herpetozoa? Herpetozoa.
Herpetozoa.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Always caught me out for a second there.
All right, cool. Yeah, man, this was really good chat. Really nice to meet you. Is there anything else that you think we should talk about that you want to add, or before we wrap it up?
No, I think that was great. I think we touched on a lot of key things. I think anything we missed isn't important to discuss now. We touched on some things I didn't expect us to.
Okay.
And we had a good time.
Yeah, I definitely want to have you back in here and like hear about your latest adventures.
Yeah.
So, you know, keep us informed, and who knows, maybe me and you will have an adventure on our own.
We've got big things planned in the future. Unfortunately for me, like work, you know, I have to live, right? So it takes up a lot of my time, and I don't get the time to do as many personal ventures as I would like, but we're talking about a lot of stuff which is really crazy for the future. And the second it's possible to go to Myanmar, you know, we're going to go there. Okay. And we think there's so many new species waiting to be discovered in Myanmar. So
I bet.
Stay tuned for that.
All right.
I'll have some good stories from those ventures.
Thank you very much, Rupert Reptiles. Really appreciate it. Thanks again. All right, folks, take it easy.